Hey guys, welcome back to the Art of Living Well podcast. Today, Stephanie and I thought it would be fun to just have like a potpourri of topics. We have had a lot of deep episodes lately and some serious topics. And we always think it's so fun to hear like what other people are reading and listening to and watching. So we thought we would talk about that a little bit before we dive into some other things we want to talk about today. So Stephanie, tell me, what are you watching right now?
Well, Marnie, you know me, I'm always like, I don't know, months, if not years behind what everyone else is watching. So there's two things I thought I'd mention. And the first is I'm finally watching Just Like That, which was like kind of a sequel to Sex and the City.
I've never heard of it.
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me that I know something about TV or a show that you don't? Okay, everyone just like make mental note of that.
Just
because
like
it may
that.
be the first and last time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like Just Like That. So it's an HBO series, well, which obviously Sex and the City was on HBO. And it's, Samantha wasn't part of it, at least not. I'm on episode 8. So maybe she comes at some point. But I had heard before that there was a little, maybe some drama. And yes. And so she wasn't going to be part of this. And it came out after the pandemic because there's a lot of references to the pandemic. So maybe it came out a year ago. I'm not really sure, actually. It's just been on my list for a while and it's fun. I mean, I loved that show and it brings back so many memories. And they're older now.
Is Big in it?
Well, I don't want to give it away. I don't want to say something. Is this the one
with the Peloton bike?
Yes.
Oh, I have heard of this. I have heard of this, actually.
Because there was kind of a little bit of a lot. I mean, I think
I remember. I didn't watch it, but I heard about it.
Yeah. So if anyone out there was a Sex and the City fan back in the 90s, right? Mm-hmm. Or 2000s. And I remember watching it when I lived in London. It was like the only American show I could get access to on like the local TV. It's just fun. It's fun to see where their lives have taken them and, just relevant topics that people are dealing with now, especially like because they're around our age, right? Still living in New York City. Carrie still has all the pretty fun, fashionable dresses and it takes you back and it's fun to, sometimes I've been watching it while I've been in my sauna or if I'm like inside working out, I may put it on if like I'm on a treadmill or something like that, like out of town. So anyway, I really have enjoying it. It's light and sometimes we need light. And then the second thing that we've been watching a little bit as a family, we haven't gotten through the whole series, but it's Limitless. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it, but I've never seen that one either.
Okay. So it's on Disney Plus and it's like a National Geographic Disney Plus series. And it's with Chris Hemsworth, who, who doesn't want to watch a good looking Aussie with those amazing, beautiful blue eyes? Yeah. But it's a series where he's like pushing his boundaries to really improving his chances for living longer. So it's really all about longevity, which is what we talk about here. Mm-hmm. And I think I had heard after I started watching it that maybe he was tested for like a certain gene, something that that could potentially shorten his life. And don't quote me on that. So we've watched 2 of the episodes so far, and I'm on to 3. And we've watched it with our kids, or at least 1 or 2 of the kids, which is kind of fun to have like an appropriate show that you can watch with younger kids. So the first one was all about stress. And he has to do this crane walk, and they do all these things leading up to this big event to get him to calm down because some stress is something that he, kind of struggled with, right? And they even talk about breathing, and there's like a therapist on there helping him, and he has to do different almost like homework or challenges before he leads him up to this big event walking across on this crane. And then the second one is all about shock and cold plunges. And he's in the Arctic and he's doing cold plunges. And so they're talking about the science behind that. And then the third one that we started watching is about fasting. And it's so interesting. He's never done a fast, like any type of fast. And he's going to do a 4-day fast. And there's lots of experts and specialists that are all obviously involved with this. And he has some friends like his brother that will take part in some of the activities with him. And it's interesting for my kids to watch too, because here's this like famous, actor, and he's honestly doing and saying a lot of these things that we talk about, that I talk about in my home with my kids, I don't know. It's really good.
So there's no connection
educational
to the movie Limitless. Do you remember that movie? I can't remember if it was Bradley Cooper, I think was in it.
Oh,
And he like
the title is not ringing a bell.
He like, I think it was called Limitless, and he like takes a pill and it makes him have all this extra energy. And I wonder if they're connected somehow. If it's like a spinoff. I don't know.
I don't know. This is clearly like more a documentary, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it's all like him going through it for the first time, being filmed, and why he's going through it. And it's all about, he is trying to, change his lifestyle in certain ways and do things that are going to help him live a longer, healthier life.
Interesting.
And yeah. And so there's other ones that there's like, I think, so I've gotten through 3, or I'm partial of the way through the 3rd episode. And then I think there's another one like on strength and memory. So
interesting.
I highly recommend it. And the kids like it too, because it's kind of, he makes it entertaining, of course.
Right.
And they're doing things like jumping in this freezing cold water.
That's funny. So yeah, my shows are not that deep in terms of like, they really have no connection to my work or our work. But I'm watching right now. This just dropped last week, Daisy Jones and the Six, which is a book.
Have you read the book?
I haven't read the book. I've seen it like in the airport and stuff. And I saw the cover, but I never picked it up. And then I was just hearing all this like talk about it. And I'm pretty sure Reese Witherspoon produced it. And so I'm like, I'm just curious to see what this is. So Jordan and I watched one episode last Friday when it dropped. And it was so good that we immediately watched the 2nd and the 3rd episode, which is all that has dropped so far. It was a lot of episodes back to back, which we don't do very often, but it was really, really good. It's about a band that kind of, rises through the ranks, getting to be pretty famous. And it takes place in the 70s, which is really fun to see like what things are like in the 70s. And they end up, I haven't seen how it goes, but I know that they end up becoming very famous because there's a lot of like flash forwards and flashbacks, and it's really, really good. And it sucks you in right away. So highly recommend that.
I'm excited.
So 3 more episodes drop this Friday, and they're dropping the episodes like every Friday. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't go watch this Friday. I can't watch it. Like, I have stuff. I'm like, what am I going to watch? But I'll figure it out. And the other thing,
I wonder if we should read the book first or watch the.
Well, I'm already I'm in deep already, but my friend read the book and she said it is a little bit different. So I am going to read the book eventually, but right now I'm just going to enjoy the series since I'm already into it. And then the second thing that we started watching, and I wasn't that excited about it, but 2 friends recommended it to me. And this is an older series too. It's called Jack Ryan.
Okay, I have not heard of that.
I think it's on Prime, Amazon Prime. And it's based on Tom Clancy's, Tom Clancy's a writer, and one of his characters is Jack Ryan. And it's basically like an American political action thriller. And it takes place, he's like this character, Jack Ryan, is a former Marine. And he's working as an analyst in, I think it's the CIA, and we're pretty new into it. And it's connected to terrorists and terror cells in Syria. And there's a lot that happens in Paris, and it's so fascinating. Like, it's hard to watch at times, but it's really, really good. And we're very sucked into it. And it's something different. It's not something I usually would watch. So.
Right. And I bet John would like that. I'll have to add that one to my list too.
I think he would. It's really good. I guess there are 3 seasons and there's a 4th coming out. So I think it was initially released in maybe 2018. So a little late to the party, but it's really good.
Yeah. That's always good. It's good to find those ones that you haven't watched, that were from a few years ago. So Marnie, I know you've been reading quite a bit. And I've had a little bit of a hiatus, but I'm picking back up again. What are you reading right now?
So I'm reading a number of books. Well, one of them I just finished actually, but I want to mention it because I loved it so much. It's called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And it's by Gabrielle Zevin. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The book cover is super colorful. You'll see it like in any bookstore. I feel like I've seen it all over the place. And I had to read it for my book club, which is taking place next week. And I am so excited to discuss this book because it was really different from most of the books that I've read recently. And it was about these two young people that kind of come together over a shared experience in a hospital setting while playing a video game. And video games are so not a part of my life. Like, I don't ever play video games. My kids really weren't video gamers. We don't have that in our house. And I really know very little about gaming and that whole world. And this whole book is about video game design and how these two kids like develop this deep friendship, and it goes all the way, through their lives as video game designers. And that sounds like I was like, video games, like that sounds horrible, but it was so good. And it's a very deep book. There's so many different things you can talk about and philosophies, and just like, it just made me think a lot about a lot of different things in the world and in life. And it was a fantastic book. So highly recommend it. I loved it.
I'm going to add that to my list too.
And it's written in a way that really draws you in. Because like I said, video games do not interest me at all. But this book was fantastic.
That's like when you have found a really good book. When you can pick up a book on a topic that you're not super excited about and then get sucked in like that. Like, that's a great writer.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then I'm reading 2 books that are a little bit more work related, I guess. I'm reading Young Forever by Dr. Mark Hyman, who I know we both love. And this is really good. It just came out, I think, like maybe 2 weeks ago. And it's about, reversing disease, getting rid of pain in the body, and really just trying to, live younger, longer. And he talks a lot about your biological age and your chronological age. And as I'm approaching 50, I've been thinking about that a lot. How, yes, chronologically, I am going to be 50, but hopefully biologically, I'm maybe like 30. So it's really good. I'm only like a quarter of the way in. And then the other book that I'm reading, I'm kind of switching off between the two, is called Lighter by Young Pueblo. And I guess it's a little bit more of a self-help kind of book. And it's about, letting go of your past, kind of connecting in the present, and then how you move forward on your future. And it's really good. He shares a lot of personal stories and gives tips. And he has an Instagram page. Can't remember the name. It might just be his name, but I'll link it up in the show notes. And that's how I found out about his book, is I had followed him on Instagram for a long time. So yeah,
I love his posts that he shares. I'm always sharing, like resharing them. Mm-hmm. I need to get that book also. I need to add that to my list. I have like a whole list. I just need to like go away for a few days and just do nothing but read. I'm like so excited about these books that you mentioned.
Yeah. So it's funny. I'm on Goodreads now, which is like a app on your phone. And I have like these goals of how many books I want to read in the course of a year. But what I've found is that if I at least make myself read, and I really love to read, so it's not that hard, but I make time for 10 pages a day. If I can just get in 10 pages a day, and if it's more, that's great, then I feel really good.
Yes. I've tried to do that also. I need to make it more of a priority. Well, kind of on the lines of the Hyman book, I started reading, I know you've read this, is Life Force by Tony Robbins. And there's like some doctors that are contributing. And that is fascinating. I actually, even before I think I got to like page 50, I sent it to my mom and my parents, and I gave it to my mother-in-law. So she turned, it was 80 in January. And I ended up giving it to her because I just thought, you know what, there's so much hope in that book and some cool stuff that's coming down the pipe. And as we age, we don't have to just settle for what's traditionally been done as far as surgeries and medicine, and just to know that like, if you're in pain, there are other alternatives. So I haven't even gotten to halfway through, but I am enjoying that book. It's just a little bit heavier. And then Marnie, I just started reading a book that you lent me, which was Night Road by Kristen Hanna. And I've read a lot of her books. And so I really, really love her. And this is great. It's very different than some of the other ones that I've read that have been almost a little bit.
right?
Yes,
I mean, it's a
it's
little
a beach
lighter.
read.
I mean, it's not lighter actually, but it's easier reading, I guess.
Yes. Yes. And so I'm going to probably tear through that when we're out of town in a week if I don't get to it before then. So highly recommend that one. Yeah. I haven't done as much reading the last month. So that's
But you've been doing a lot of listening, right?
I've been doing a lot more listening. And then I actually, just put on my Audible because I realized I had like 4 credits. Clearly I haven't been doing as much listening on Audible is,
Spare.
Oh my gosh, why am I blanking?
Spare.
Yes, Spare. Just, Harry's book, Prince Harry's book. So I'm excited to dive into that because actually I have started watching that, or I did finish the Netflix. I think it was Netflix, the series on Harry and Meghan, which is another watch that I have done in the last couple months.
So, and I'll say like, I listened to Spare. Stephanie knows this, and I loved it and feel so much compassion for him. And I cried multiple times listening to him in the book. And I don't understand. So many people do not like them. And there's so much negative press about the two of them. And, the Netflix series I thought was, enlightening, but the book I found to be so much more powerful when you really get into his mind and hear him talking about how he felt.
I think it's easy for us to judge the situation. They live in a completely different life than most people.
Yes.
And I think we need to appreciate that. And I remember watching the Oprah special when she interviewed them back a couple of years ago now. Yeah, and I was like, wow, I had no idea. That was really good too. I had no idea all this was going on, the stuff behind closed doors and we could go down a rabbit hole talking about that right now. And
totally. I mean, I have so much compassion for, first of all, how like locked up he felt, like controlled, I guess is a better word, by the family. And then when they actually did leave, like kudos to you for trying to step away. And how hard is that to step away from all that you've ever known your whole life and your family? Yeah. And I mean,
and have to literally start over, but being worried and like fearful for your life.
Right.
Because of the paparazzi and everything else, and just the way his mother died, so it's more to come on that, I guess we could.
Yes. And I'm sure if you're listening to this, you might have really strong opinions because I've heard a lot of strong opinions on this topic. Feel free to share them with us.
Yes.
Yeah. What about podcasts? What do you listen to?
So, we listen to a lot of podcasts, obviously, but one that I listened to, gosh, it was back in January, was an episode on the Drew Pruitt podcast, which I really, really like him. And it intrigued me, the title, because it was called Whistleblower Exposes the Dirty Tactic that Coca-Cola Used to Rig the System and Keep Vulnerable Populations Unhealthy. And the guest was Callie Means. And Callie Means actually also happens to be the brother of the Dr. Casey, who founded or was one of the co-founders of Levels. And we had one of the doctors from Levels on our podcast back, 3-4 months ago now. And it's really all about, he was a consultant and he had firsthand observations. And he tweeted this that kind of went viral, that inside the room where these Coca-Cola, executives, employees, whatever, the tactics that they were using to ensure that these sugar sweetened beverages failed the different taxes that, a lot of legislation was trying to be enacted, right, to tax these beverages. And they were, the lobbying that took place, and really just the fact that these drinks are harming us and that are keeping a lot of people from becoming healthier and living longer lives, and they're developing diabetes and addictions and all this stuff. And what the other thing that he has done recently, one, he's writing a book with his sister. And two, he's founded this company, True Med, which is helping Americans to buy exercise equipment and healthy food using their FSA, so their flexible spending account and healthcare savings account dollars, which is not something that had been done before. And I loved the episode so much that I reached out to him on Instagram and then followed up with an email and asked him to be on our podcast. And we have an interview set up with him. So that episode will drop sometime late spring, but I'm really excited for this conversation. He's all over Instagram now and talking and really using his voice and his experience to, help more people, right? It's easy for some of us to say, oh, just go eat more fruits and vegetables or buy or go work out. But you know what? That's not accessible for a lot of people. And so he's trying to make healthy lifestyle more accessible to Americans so that ultimately we can live longer, healthier lives and avoid hospitalizations and surgeries and all the things. So I'm excited about that one.
It sounds awesome. I'm super excited he's coming on our podcast. So stay tuned.
So what are you listening to?
Yeah, I've been, I've listened to the Feel Better, Live More podcast a lot by Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, who Stephanie and I have both followed for a really, really long time. And I don't always listen to his podcast because his episodes are really, really long. They're like 2 hours. So it has to really draw me in to listen to a full episode. But he has Dr. Mindy Pelz on this week. And I'll link up the app. We'll link up all of this in the show notes if you guys want to find what we're talking about. But it's an episode that talks about women's health, hormones, and fasting. And although we've all heard these topics, many times, I think she explains things in a really clear and succinct way where it's like really clicking in my brain. And she has a new book out, and some of her ideas, like even around exercise and movement and what you do on days, on certain days, depending on where you are in your cycle, which I thought was super interesting, where she talks about, I think it was like days 1 through, I don't even remember, 7 or 10 or something, where you're doing your heavy lifting and, your energizing workouts. And maybe towards the end of your cycle, you're doing more like yoga and more calming things. And she talks about fasting and how different hours of fasting can do different things in your body. And she really breaks it down. Like, this is what happens in your body at a 12-hour fast. And this is what happens in your body at a 14-hour fast and at a 17-hour fast and at a 24-hour fast. And she is specifically talking to women in this episode and how it affects women's bodies. Because men and fasting is very different from women and fasting. And so I just have found this episode to be so fascinating. And she talks about progesterone and estrogen and how certain things you do raise, one hormone and lowers another hormone. And she really lays it out in a very clear way.
Yeah. I love this topic because hormones is kind of my thing, right? But I thought she did a really good job as well. And the exercise thing is something that not everyone realizes it. I talk with a lot of clients about it, but like, there's a reason why when you have less energy, either right before your cycle or during your cycle, don't push yourself. And the problem is like gyms, a lot of these places have the same classes every day. And if you can only work out these days at this time, sometimes your best exercise is taking a nap, and just going on a walk or doing nothing. And I think we push ourselves as women that we have to go to that class when our body, if we listen to it, is telling us to slow down and do something more restorative.
Right.
And I think that just gets back to like all these discussions we've had about really tuning into what your body needs on a given day and not, be looking externally to what we should do when it comes to exercise, fasting, all those things. Right.
Absolutely.
So.
And she even says, there's a reason why you're craving chocolate around your cycle. And, maybe your magnesium levels are low or whatever it is. And Stephanie and I talk about this a lot. Like she just said, like tune into your body. Your body actually knows what you need. You just have to really listen to it.
Right. Right. So what else? The other kind of thing I thought we could chat about is just like, what are we drinking? Like, what have we to get cozy in the winter, these cold winter months in Minnesota. And, sometimes we're both such creatures of habit about certain things, but it's kind of fun to find a new something. This is in the case of beverages. And I always was like a green tea, mint tea kind of, most mornings of the week. And I have found that I love a chai tea latte. And so going back in the days, many, many years ago, I would love like a Starbucks chai tea latte, which is just full of sugar, right? And I stopped doing that many years ago, but I just make my own little chai tea latte. And I love the Rishi brand that we shop. It's local, or I think maybe they're from Wisconsin. So they have the chai tea. And then what I do is just warm up some almond milk and put a couple drops of monk fruit sweetener in. and make my own little chai tea latte. And something about those spices, right? They're just very grounding and warming. And so I've been preferring this over my green tea lately. And I just thought I would share that.
That sounds so yummy. I want to go make one after this.
Yeah. Well, you got to go buy your chai tea.
I think I have it in my cabinet.
Oh, yeah.
Because my girls love chai. I mean, I like chai tea too, but I just don't think about it. Like you said, I get in my habit of making my ginger turmeric or my mint or whatever it is.
Right.
I also have been, drinking a newish beverage in the evening instead of the morning, which is the Organifi Gold chocolate drink. And it's cacao. It's not chocolate. And it's only like I think it's 1 gram or less than 1 gram of sugar. And there's mushrooms in it and all magnesium and all kinds of good stuff. And it is delicious. And Jordan and I have both been having a cup after dinner. And, I do have a sweet tooth sometimes for some dark chocolate. And I don't even have those cravings with this tea. I have 1 cup and it fills me up and it's like calming and relaxing and it's delicious. And I just love it. So it's the Organifi Gold and it's the cacao flavor.
Yes. I love that one too. I found it a couple of years ago and you're right. It just nips any sugar or sweet or chocolate craving you have in the bud. And it's just, you just mix it with hot water. You could add a little bit of almond milk if you want to, but it's so easy to make. And
I just remember you telling me, Stephanie, I don't know that you drink these cacao flavored mushroom drinks. And I remember being like, that sounds disgusting. I actually remember thinking that it sounds disgusting. And now here I am. And it's so good. It's not disgusting at all. You hear mushroom and
you got to give it a try.
But it's delicious. So anyway, we'll link that
it's a little bit of an acquired taste. Yeah. We'll link that up in the show notes.
This one is just really yummy.
I think so too. It just depends. If you're drinking Swiss Miss at night, though, this may take a little bit of an adjustment. But
that's true.
Trust me, it's a great substitution. If you're trying to break some habits too, it's nice to have a replacement. And I think this is the perfect gateway into, less sugar.
Okay, Stephanie. So I know you've had some tragedy, I guess, in your life recently. And I'm wondering if you can talk about what's come out of that for you.
Yeah. So it has been pretty heavy. There were 2 different instances with local, I guess they were dads and, somewhat unexpected for sure. And they passed. And it just gives you a lot of pause. And it's been really a time of reflection. And then actually, I was out of town last weekend, already planning to visit a friend. And I had an event I was going to. And the day that I was flying out, my friend who I was staying with told me that her mom suddenly passed away. So we've got 3 different deaths within a very short time period. It provides you this opportunity, if you will, to pause and reflect on your own life. And it's extremely sad because most of these were very suddenly. And it just makes you realize life is precious. Life is short. We're not in control over when we're going to leave this earth right now. And how do you want, kind of not what you want your legacy to be. I don't want that to come off the wrong way, but as you sit through these eulogies and you celebrate the person's life and you hear the wonderful person that they were and the friend that they were and the father or whoever, it makes you think about interactions with your kids, relationships, your own family, the time that you spend with them. When we get upset at our kids about something stupid or our spouse, if we thought about in 24 hours, would we still be upset about it? Then why are we getting, in the moment, why are we losing our shit, for lack of a better word? And it also makes you realize too, that there are things from a spousal relationship that I don't know about, right? Whether it's banking or investments, just beyond just your will. If something were to happen, would I even know the first place to start or to look? And I'd much rather get all those ducks in order now before at some point something happens. At some point, we're all going to go, right? And then hopefully this is 50 years from now, because my goal is to live to 100, but we don't know. And so, Marnie, you and I kind of talked a little bit about this, and we actually were we need to talk about death is a full episode on this show. And we did once last year, and it was really powerful episode. But I think too, just like the preparation for in the event that something happens a little more suddenly than we expect, are you ready? Because when someone, would unfortunately potentially get sick in your life, you don't want to be trying to deal with like the tactical logistics and stuff. You want to be able to like spend time with that person and focus on them. So that kind of prompted us to reach out, and you had a contact with someone that we're going to interview and talk a little bit more about this, because I do think we're all reaching the point where, a lot of our listeners are in that sort of middle age range, and we have parents that, may pass at some point, that probably will. And then we're also at this stage where there are adults that are in their 50s or 40s that, for a variety of reasons are leaving this earth a little bit probably too soon. Right. So anyway, we didn't want this to be a heavy conversation, but it has been weighing a lot on my mind.
Yeah. I mean, it's a part of life. I mean, it's an important conversation, right? And like, I guess there's no silver lining except that it makes you take a step back and reevaluate, right? Uh-huh. Think about, like you said, how important is this when all things are said and done? Is this a big deal or is this a small deal? And like just living your life the way you want to live it right now. Because, I know so many people that say, oh, when I retire, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Well, you don't know what's going to be 20 years from now or 15 years from now or however old you are. Like you got to do, what you can right now. Right.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be extravagant, just living your day to day, how you want to live it. So that could mean a job change. If you're miserable in your job and you're saying, well, when I retire, I'll be happier. That's sad, right? Like
it is. Well, it's like there's that quote. I can't remember who it was. You don't want to like wait for your next vacation to be feeling joy and happy, right? So how can you create that feeling on a day-to-day basis?
In your day-to-day.
And it doesn't need to be big.
I totally understand. Like people, they're sometimes you have to work in a job you don't like. Mm-hmm. But then maybe if you're in that situation, maybe there are other ways you can fill yourself up outside of the job, or just to find ways to be happy in the day-to-day. And like Stephanie said, not focus on the minutia. Mm-hmm. So thanks for sharing this, because I think it's important.
Yeah. Yeah. So more to come. So it's spring, or it's going to be spring really soon when this episode drops. So let's talk a little bit about what are we doing to spring clean our lives?
Well, first of all, right now I'm looking outside and it's like fully snowing. So spring does not seem around the corner.
No, I know.
Even though I know it is, because this happens every year. But, we have our detox coming up in April, which is starting on April 10th. And I would hope by April 10th that I'm not looking at any snow. But just thinking about spring, I like to start to like declutter. And I kind of do that a little bit in the winter too, but really in the spring, I'm like, okay, let's get everything cleaned up. Like we're going to open up the house and, wipe away the dust, if you will, and get rid of clothes and clean out the pantry. And I just like, I have to say, I love spring cleaning, and I love the feeling of like, I love it.
I agree.
How else to say it?
It's
just
therapeutic.
Feels so good.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very
and
therapeutic.
Just like dive into a project. And like, if I look at my whole house, it's overwhelming because I can't get through my whole house. Right.
Right.
But if I just tackle one thing at a time, it feels really good. So I think March, April, and May are great times to take on a decluttering project or a spring cleaning project.
Absolutely. Just start with one area, one drawer. It'll make you so happy that every time you go in the drawer, you'll be like, oh, so organized and clean. And yeah.
Totally.
And I actually think
your fridge.
Yeah. Oh, the fridge is like, oh, I love doing that. I mean, I don't love doing it, but I love the after,
Me too. And I'm always like showing Jordan and the kids, look at the fridge. Look how pretty it is.
And then they just get it dirty. My family is like, puts everything in a different spot and whatever. It lasts like 2 seconds. But, you mentioned the detox, which is, liver detox. And in traditional Chinese medicine, the spring is the ideal time to be detoxing the liver. And one thing, not to dive into that because we've talked a lot about the detox before, but I actually love the opportunity to spring clean an area of my house on the detox because I find especially if I'm doing the fasting day or two, it's just a nice distraction. And you can just immerse yourself in this little project for an hour or two. And then you don't even think about the fact that you're not eating a lot of food or you're just drinking the shakes or whatever. So they kind of go hand in hand. It's very therapeutic.
Don't you think? Yeah,
I agree.
So spring is a great time, like Stephanie said, to clean the inside of your body too, and really just get rid of stuff. So the detox is a perfect way to do that. The April one is 7 days. I know a lot of you joined us for our January 14 day. There's no issue with doing it again. It's a quarterly liver detox. This one is 7 days. And if the April 10th start date doesn't work for you, you could start it earlier. You could do it a little later. And we're really flexible with working with you on that. And we would love to have you join us.
Yeah. So the link will be in the show notes. Message us with any questions on Instagram or email. And we would love to have you join our community for this upcoming liver detox. So like Marnie said, it'll start Monday, April 10th, but feel free. You can always start a couple days before, a couple days after, whatever works for your schedule.
And we are having Lizzie again.
Yes.
Do an energy clearing. Lizzie Cutler. Thank you. I blanked on her last name for a second. Do an energy clearing for us, for the group. And she did this in January and it was so wonderful. So that she'll be our special guest again.
Yes. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for today. Drop us a note with what you're listening to, reading, or watching, because we love getting new ideas and suggestions. I have a whole list on my phone of books and shows to watch.
And if you like this episode, please share it with a friend, leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts, and we would love to hear from you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.